Today's the sixth Sunday of the Great Lent. It's the Sunday of the Born Blind Man, and it's also the Sunday that many people baptize their children. It was actually a little history. It was common to baptize people on Easter Sunday. So that was the tradition of the early church. You would spend some time learning about the church as a catechumen, and then eventually on Easter Sunday you'd go to the bishop, and the bishop would give you a test. Basically make you recite the creed, and then you would be baptized. And then the proselytes or the newly baptized would be in the procession, and they would actually be the icon of the resurrection, because as St. Paul says, he was baptized with Christ, was baptized, was buried with him, and then resurrected with him. So the baptism is the resurrection, and so they would wear the white tunia, and they would be in the procession. And then as time passed, sort of the rituals of Easter kind of grew, and it became a crowded time, so they wanted to baptize them a little bit earlier. So they went back a week, and it was Palm Sunday, and decided, Palm Sunday doesn't really fit because that's Holy Week, it's Pescha, and it doesn't really fit with the celebration of Easter, of baptism, especially child baptism. So they moved it a week back further, which is today. And so this is why it's called the Sunday of Baptism. And of course it fits really well because baptism we call the sacrament of enlightenment, where our eyes are opened and we can see God and have him become a part of our life. So this is sort of the history of why people baptize their kids on this Sunday. And so let's kind of talk a little bit with God's grace about this born blind man and why is he blind, and was it God's plan that he be blind? The disciples sort of asked the obvious question, especially based on the Old Testament: who sinned, this man or his parents? Because in the Old Testament, something like this was a curse, and so it was clearly a punishment, and it's clearly because they did something bad. And unfortunately, sometimes we think the same thing. Sometimes when something, quote-unquote, bad happens to us, we think to ourselves, God's punishing me, or I did something wrong, or God's trying to teach me a lesson. And Christ here very clearly tells the disciples, the apostles, and us, nobody sinned. Neither him nor his parents. But I gave him this great struggle so that the glory of God could be manifest, so that people could see the works of God. And so this is a very important lesson for us, because sometimes when we have bad things, quote unquote, happen to us, we think to ourselves, what I do, and why is God doing this to me? And the answer is no, it's so that the glory of God can be manifest. So the question I have, and then the question I think about with this born blind man is, I wonder how many times he prayed to be healed. I wonder how often he wanted and his family begged God to heal him. And so you can imagine 1,000 times. 1,000 times he asked to be healed, and 1,000 times his family asked to be healed. And so now we get to a really hard question. What happens when my prayers go unanswered? What happens when in my own life I often pray for things and never got it? And what do I do if I don't understand God's will for my life? Why are these things happening to me? St. John in his gospel tells us, this is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. And this is an interesting verse, because I know I've asked many times for things and not got them. Get daycare in here. I've asked for so many things in my life through prayer, and I know I haven't gotten them. I've asked him for trials to be lifted that didn't get lifted. I asked for my work to flourish, and it didn't. I asked for my parents' health, a million things. And many times we ask for things and we don't get them. And the question is, why wouldn't God give something sooner? Why wouldn't he listen to a prayer like that? There's a modern theologian, his name is MacDonald, but he wrote this nice quote that I want to read to you. He said, should God, the way he writes is really nice, that's why I like him. Should God be willing to give a man the thing he knows he would afterwards wish he had not given him? Imagine God giving you something that he knows that later he wish he hadn't given you. To give a man what he wants because he wants it, and without the purpose of furthering his good, would be to let a poor ignorant child take his fate into his own hands, the cruelty of a devil. It's like when your child asks for a knife and you hand it to him. That's not love, that's cruelty. He continues and he says, I cannot believe in a God that should fail to hear, receive, and attend to one single prayer, the feeblest or the worst. But a God that would grant every request of every man would be an evil God. That is no God, but a demon. And so he's basically saying, if God just gave us all our requests, that wouldn't be a loving God. Just like a parent that gives all the requests to their children wouldn't be a loving parent. It just doesn't work like that. And so sometimes we don't understand exactly what God's doing. And it's like we're on this trip on earth. We call ourselves sojourners on earth, and we don't have an agenda. When you go to, wherever, Europe or something, you've made an agenda. You say, on this day I'm going to visit here, then I'm going to go here, then I'm going to do this. And here we are on this big trip of our life as sojourners on this earth. We have no agenda. We have no idea what's happening next week. A few months ago, during the Nativity, we read about a string of chaotic events. It was the flight of the Holy Family into Egypt and the birth of Christ. So Christ comes into the world, God incarnate himself, the life and hope of the world, and it seems like a bit of a mess. He comes to a virgin who gets disgraced. She's passed off to a man to protect her reputation because it looks really bad. And when it's time to give birth, he forgets to make reservations at the hotel. And so now they have to go to a manger with animals. This is a mess. And nobody cleans up the manger. No one takes care of anything. It's still there. The animals are there. The smells are there. And they give birth to a baby in a highly unsanitary environment without cleaning the place up. And then you have to run and flee the country because they're trying to kill you. Seems like a lot of chaos. But in this chaos, God's plan emerges slowly but surely. And so in the chaos of these family emergencies, fleeing the country for your life, not having a place to sleep, being food insecure, home insecure, safety insecure, in all of this, God is still there. And it's beautiful to me that God didn't give his own son any more privilege than he gives me. Because, if Jesus' life was a bed of roses, right, and none of that insecurity happened and the chaos and flee for your life, and then you'd say, why'd you take care of him and not take care of me? But he didn't take care, even of his own son, even of the Theotokos. He let her suffer. He let her struggle. He let her be scared, her and Joseph. Christ's life was in danger. He let all of those things happen. So God didn't use his power to prevent all of these issues from happening, even to the Holy Family, even at their most vulnerable time. And so why wouldn't he give the Holy Family a free ride? A free hall pass through life. No issues, no problems, no insecurity. Why? Because the rest of us don't get one either. His own life serves as an example to all of us that the fact is, being a Christian isn't about getting your way. And it isn't about getting out of difficulty here on earth. That's not the point of being a Christian. I pray to God and he takes away all the bad things. And if I do all the good things to God, he takes away all the bad things. That's not the point. And what's also amazing is Joseph didn't get the plan either. He didn't get an email listing out all these things. In fact, he would get them the day before. The night before, he'd have a dream. He'd say, you got to leave tomorrow. They're coming to get you. And he would just flee. Obviously, God knew the plan from the beginning of time, yet Joseph didn't get any of it. He was told one piece at a time, and it sounds a lot like our life. One of the spiritual writers says, learn that the greatest pains and trials today will one day become your greatest delight. When will this happy time arrive? Only God knows. It will be when he pleases, for he knows when the time that will be the most suitable and the best for us. So we don't always know how it's going to end. We don't always know when the struggle or the suffering will be lifted. And I'm sure the born blind man today couldn't imagine this outcome. And he couldn't imagine why it happened. And in fact, when Christ, if you noticed in the gospel today, when Christ said, go wash your face, go wash your eyes out of this dirt, he didn't tell him to be healed. He just said, some guy who this man never heard of, Jesus, slapped some mud on his face and said, now go wash your face. And the guy goes, okay. He didn't know what was going to happen 5 minutes from that moment. And so St. John Chrysostom tells this beautiful story. He tells it, and he gives this nice example. He says, wait till the end, and you will see the outcome of events. Don't fuss, don't worry. And then he has this nice example. He says, imagine someone who is not of the trade watching a blacksmith start to melt down gold and mixing in ashes and straw. If he does not wait till the end, he will think the poor piece of gold is going to be destroyed. Yet the blacksmith does this to make the piece pure gold. What an analogy. Watching someone make gold, he sets it on fire. He burns it. He melts it. And if you don't know what he's doing, you think, what's this guy doing? That's a gold chain. Why would you set it on fire like that? But then you realize he's purifying the gold. And as the psalmist says, purifying the silver. So sometimes I pray and the right thing doesn't happen. I ask God in prayer and it doesn't change. So then why doesn't God do some of the things I asked? If Christ loves me and he could give me everything, and even he gives me himself, why would he hold anything back? If Christ is willing to give me himself, his life, why would he hold anything back? It must be that the love is what's holding him back. Love is holding back the petition. There must be a struggle there that God doesn't want to hold back from me. He wants me to benefit from. And maybe God's love is to allow me to suffer. And as I go through my life, I realize that the hardest struggles I've had made me the best person, made me the strongest person, made me the most patient person. St. Therese of Lisieux, she says something really amazing. And this is really hard to do, so everybody just hang on. It has come to this, that I can no longer suffer, because all suffering is sweet. That's crazy to me. It has come to this, I can no longer suffer, because all suffering is sweet. Besides, it is a mistake to worry as to what trouble may be in store. It's like meddling with God's work. We who run in the way of love must never allow ourselves to be disturbed by anything. I look only at the present moment. I forget the past. And I take good care not to even worry about the future. And the words of Job have entered my heart. Even if God should kill me, I would trust him. I admit it has taken a long time to arrive at this degree of self-abandonment, but I have reached it now, and it is the Lord himself who brought me there. Imagine reaching the point where no matter what happens, you don't suffer, because all the suffering is sweet. And so what is the effect of struggle on us? What is the effect on the Theotokos? What is the effect on Joseph to be scared and insecure like that? And the question comes up that we often ask in college, why does a good God do bad things? And this is the Philosophy 101 professor messing with the heads of the freshmen. And the obvious answer is, why'd you assume it's bad? Because I didn't like it. So then who becomes the center of truth? I am the center of truth. I dictate what is good and what is bad. I know all things. And I don't like this, therefore, it is bad. And how do I approach these things in my life I don't like? Do I approach it like fire that is purifying me as gold? Or do I view it as wicked, evil people doing wicked, evil things to me? And in our modern world, unfortunately, that second answer is the answer we tell all the youth to say. Many of the youth especially now, are taught a victim mentality all the time. They did this to me. I'm a victim. And that puts them in a dungeon in their minds of self-pity and self-despair. Because when you're a victim and you can't do anything about it, you could just wallow in your own pity. But the spiritual giants don't have that perspective of victim, ever. Another spiritual writer writes, "For true friends of Jesus, evil does not exist. Everything is turned to good. Hurt, pain, evil done against us are transformed for our spiritual growth. Sin is also transformed as an opportunity to trust in God, receive His forgiveness, and experience His unconditional love." She's basically saying there is no evil. Everything is good. Everything that comes from the hand of God. Death itself, the epitome of all that is evil and destructive, is transformed to eternal life, becomes resurrection. Okay, so this is all great in theory, but practically, how does this evil get transformed into something good, into eternal life? And what's the point of all this? So I want to get back to this point of prayer. Did the blind man pray to be healed? And if so, what is the point of prayer? I want to read you another quote. Sorry, I have too many quotes today. But these guys say it better than I do. What if God knows that the thing we need first and most is prayer? What if the main objective in God's heart is the supplying of our great and endless need, the need of Himself? Does everyone see what he's saying? So God knows what you really need is prayer. You need to pray because you need to connect to your dad. And so in His heart, He's supplying to you endless need. What if the good of all of our smaller and lower needs, food, sustenance, lies in this? They help drive us to God. You see his point? And then he ends with a really nice example. He says, imagine a runaway child, a kid who runs away from home. He says, hunger may drive the runaway child back home, and he may or may not be fed at once, but what he really needs is his mother more than his dinner. So even though hunger is what brings the kid home, the kid doesn't know he doesn't really need a meal. He needs his mom, and he needs his dad. Does that make sense? So sometimes God provides these things that we need, not because He can't provide them, but because He knows that will drive me back to Him. And what He really wants is me to go back to Him. So I want to read you a psalm. It says, listen to the psalm and tell me what you think. Psalm 107. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. That's us. And He, 1, brought them out of their distress. 2, stilled the storm to a whisper. 3, the waves of the sea were hushed. And 4, they were glad when it grew calm. 5, and He guided them to His desired haven. And you read this psalm and you think, is David just giving a theoretical answer? Is the psalm presenting a perspective, or is he just making this stuff up? And so maybe this isn't about how prayer changes the facts on the ground. Because sometimes I pray that God fix my wife, fix my husband, fix my kid, fix my boss, fix the person, my coworker. But maybe the prayer isn't supposed to fix my wife or my kid or my husband or my boss. Maybe the prayer is supposed to fix me. Maybe that's the point. Maybe prayer is about me, changing me so that I can deal with the struggles and the difficulties of life, so that I can deal with my difficult boss. Not, God, please change my boss because I want to have an easy life, but change me so that I can deal with my boss and learn to love him. Change me so I can deal with my husband. Change me so I can deal with my child. The prayer isn't changing the child. It's prayer is changing me. And put in me my dad's heart, the one that gives peace and transcends everything else. So what our soul needs is communion with God, more than all of our other needs. You don't need the job, you don't need to get into school, you don't need the car, you don't need any of that stuff. You need him. And because we forget often God so easily, it is necessary that we should be made to feel some wanting, because that's what drives us right back into his arms. And so that we may seek the one who supplies all of our needs. All right, so how do I adopt this kind of attitude where, we just read, I no longer can struggle. I can no longer suffer. There's nothing that's evil. A spiritual writer says, focus on yourself and this moment. He says, in order to become a saint, you need only to resign yourself to the present moment. And I like this word, resign. The revelation and discovery of this simple fact should give your soul peace and encouragement. And listen how he writes this. If God desires it to rain, then desire the same. If God desires the sun to shine, desire the sun. If God desires to make things pleasant, desire the same. If God desires to visit you with hardship and struggle, desire the hardship and struggle. In our everyday lives, our Lord constantly offers us the happiness of participating in the mystery of redemption. So whenever you see a situation, say, that's the situation I want. It's raining right now. I want it to rain. I'm suffering right now. I choose suffering. I don't choose to fight back. And so finally, the lesson of the born blind and really the Holy Family today in our modern Christian family is that the family is led by the hand of God. But in order to do so, you have to give up something that none of us want to give up: control. In order to be led by the hand of God, you have to give up control. And when the Holy Family did that, God took them where he wanted them to go, and he took care of them in the way they needed to be taken care of. It's like they completely surrendered and capitulated control of all the things that we're entitled to, controlling the destiny of our lives. So the central act of Christians is to surrender, is to give up. And this is ultimately what prayer is all about. Prayer is giving up my will for God's. So today, as we read about the story of the born blind man, and we see his prayers for healing all these years that I'm sure he said, we realize that our prayers need to be prayers about ourselves. Not to change the situation on the ground, not to say, get me off this cross, but rather to say, change me so that I can be on this cross with you and give me your peace and your strength to do it. May the Lord bless the rest of the Lent. Next week is Palm Sunday, then the week after is Easter. God bless you all, and glory be to God forever. Amen.